Good afternoon, my friends. My name is Thulani Maseko from Swaziland, as you have heard. Indeed, my wife and I are humbled and honored to become part of the Oslo Freedom Forum family. As you may know, 2 years ago, I could not attend because I was held in prison by the dictatorship ruling my country, Swaziland. Instead, my wife, my lovely wife, Danielle, who is here present today, came here to read a letter written while I was in prison. Today, I am out of jail and stand before you just to say thank you very much for your support. I'm sure without your support, I would have been kept in jail until the last day of my sentence. I do believe that I was not released early because of a sudden change in government, and that I was just in Swaziland all of a sudden. Instead, I was freed due to the fact that the pressure that you brought to bear on my government broke them down. I must say, though, that being out of jail does not mean that I'm free. You might think that the time for absolute kings is over, but I still live under a supreme and absolute monarch in Swaziland. The first time, therefore, I was sent to prison was in 2009. There had been a series of bomb explosions in my country, and I explained that this was caused by the absence of freedom of speech and expression in Swaziland. And for these words, for my statements, I was arrested for the crime of sedition. In 2014, police stormed into my office with a warrant of arrest signed by the King's Chief Justice, working together with my government. I spent a month in pretrial detention and 3 months of a sham trial. When the verdict came, I was sentenced to 2 years in prison without the option of a fine. It occurred to me that my country had failed me. You know, to be brought in court in leg irons like an animal is shameful. For my wife, my son, my young son, and my friends to be subjected to abuse when they came to visit me was a worst experience. The purpose of all this by my government was to break me down and to break my spirit so that I could give up on values that I hold so dear. But I refuse to give up. We shall never surrender, for we know there's a price to pay for the truth. I stand here to tell you about the abuse of power by my king, who is an absolute monarch. I could see how he and his cronies ruled our country. For example, citizens in my country are denied and deprived of their land and property for the king's purposes. They are evicted and removed from their lands, and they are rendered homeless and landless. This happens routinely because the king takes what he wants. This is the system which I and others are fighting against. This greed by my king and thirst for power is destroying my country. More than 60% of my people live below the poverty line. A third of them live with HIV and AIDS. Instead of the king addressing those issues, he buys himself Bentleys and Maybachs and BMWs for his 15 wives and a dozen of his children. But winds of change blew in South Africa around 1994. And when I saw Nelson Mandela democratically take over his country, was indeed moving and inspiring. I do believe that it is not right for anyone to be able to use supremacy and absolutism to suppress a people. In South Africa, it was oppression based on the color of the skin. In my country, it is based on bloodlines. These, in my view, are equally bad systems of government. Of course, from Mandela's struggle and my own brush with the draconian and oppressive regime in Swaziland, I learned that fighting for rights is something that is not an easy walk in the park. From this, I learned perhaps one of life's best lessons, that if you are persistent in what you want, if you insist in what you believe in, you are likely to get it, no matter how difficult it may be, and no matter how much the price to pay. I do believe that here in Norway, we have more than 7 major political parties. In my country, it is the reverse. We have one political party, which is the King's Party, ravaging our country. Our plea, therefore, is that we are calling for a constitutional monarch, like here in Norway and other constitutional democracies. We are calling for a system where the people will have a real opportunity and capacity to form a democratic government. Change has to come peacefully through dialogue and negotiation in Swaziland. I do believe that my people desire democracy and good governance. Yes, I'm here to appeal to you for support. We need to bring pressure on the king and his government to open up the doors for dialogue. We need to name and shame this dictatorship. For I know that when I was in prison and you, people of the world, supported and spoke about us and called for our release, the king had to back down. For that, he released me and my co-accused, Peggy Makubu. I believe we can learn from that lesson. And I appeal that today we need targeted pressure on the king, from the media, from democratic governments, from companies and business on the king and his family. We say that Swaziland should not access international markets unless meaningful, peaceful change is achieved. I say to you, my friends, our king and his government are destroying and ravaging our country. He needs to be held accountable. And as Obama says, change can happen. Change is possible. And until that day when change comes to my country, I will be on the road to justice. Thank you very much.